On Bank Holiday Monday, the UK maximum temperature record for May was broken by 2 degrees when temperatures at Kew Gardens reached 34.8 Celsius. But today, it's been even hotter. Hello, welcome along to this week's deep dive. Of course, I'm going to be talking to you all about the current heat wave, the exceptional heat that we have across the UK. Thank you for joining me. Remember, as always, get those questions, those comments coming in. I'll be looking at some of them straight away after this goes live on YouTube. We'll also be answering some of them in the Weather Studio Live this Friday. Annie and I will be here. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm aware a number of regular viewers of our deep dives are not currently subscribed to our YouTube channel, which is frankly mind-blowing. And also share this with anyone that you think might be interested. Now, before I get into all the hot weather, we do often issue a lot of advice on how to make sure you are weather ready, and we do that during hot spells as well. So stay hydrated, avoiding the sun during the hottest part of the day, wearing hats, taking shade, wearing sunscreen, that kind of thing. One piece of weather advice that I could have done with to keep me safe would have been to avoid jumping down a slip and slide with my kids a couple of days ago. I have hurt my back, so apologies if during this deep dive I look a little bit stiff. But let's look at the temperatures. These are our temperatures from Monday. 13 sites around the UK exceeded the previous May maximum temperature record, and 3 matched it. So the previous record was 32.8 and 13 sites were hotter than that. Kew Gardens reached 34.8. But just in, these are the latest temperatures as of 3 o'clock this afternoon on Tuesday, and Kew Gardens has been even hotter. It has reached 35 degrees, so more than 2 degrees hotter than the maximum temperature that we'd previously seen for May. That is exceptional. That is exceedingly hot. We didn't expect to see temperatures so much higher than what we'd previously seen in May a week or so ago, when we first started highlighting the potential for this hot spell. Now, we have been predicting that temperatures would be this hot during the last couple of days and warning people as a result. We have heat health alerts out to make sure that people, particularly the vulnerable, those who are more susceptible to the heat, are aware and able to cope. But yes, it has been very hot indeed. 15 sites have exceeded that 32.8, which was the previous record, and again 3 sites have equaled it. Around 150 sites in the last few days have had their maximum May temperature record broken, and around 80 sites have had their minimum temperature record broken. Last night, temperatures at Kenley Airfield only dropped to 21.3 degrees, making it the warmest night or the highest minimum temperature for May on record for the UK, and the first time that the UK has had a tropical night in May where temperatures stay above 20 Celsius. It really is an exceptionally warm or very hot spell at the moment. For any time of the year, it's hot. But for May in particular, it is still meteorological spring. Now, just to recap, the maximum temperature that we've had so far today as of 3 o'clock was at Kew Gardens when we reached 35 degrees Celsius. When it comes to looking at how exceptional this hot spell is, I wanted to show you this chart. So this, I've shown charts like this many times on deep dives. But what you can see is the average maximum temperature across the UK for every day so far this month, so for May 2026, compared to average and compared to the extremes that we've seen in the past. Now, we started the month on a warmer spell, but then we had that chillier blip, or chillier week or two really, that cold period many of us will remember, and then a real rise in our temperatures through the last week or so. Just a week ago, temperatures were a few degrees below average, and now they're so far above. But if we look at yesterday, so the 25th of May, comparing, well, you can see when you look at the whole country, unsurprisingly, the average maximum temperature, it was the highest that we've had on record. And you compare it to how far away from average it is. So the average maximum temperature for the whole of the UK was around 26.5, and compare that to the average, which is around 16.2, that kind of thing. So it's more than 10 degrees above the average for this day, for the 25th of May. But if we compare this now to another historic, exceptionally warm event and look at July 2022, when we exceeded 40 Celsius for the first time, and you can see that real rise around that time, and temperatures then, the average maximum across the UK, it was around 31 degrees, and the average for that day, or I've picked the wrong day there, the average is just over 20 degrees. So that difference was actually slightly greater. So I actually thought it wouldn't be that way around, but nonetheless, doesn't matter. The point is, yesterday was exceptionally hot. Today is exceptionally hot when you look across the UK. Not everywhere has seen those extremely high temperatures, but nonetheless, it has been an exceptionally hot day for the UK. And in terms of how groundbreaking, how historic it is, it's very similar to that first time that we reached 40 Celsius. The fact that we've exceeded the May temperature by such an amount really is extraordinary and quite worrying. But I guess a big question is, what's caused the hot weather? Now, we've talked about this quite a lot through recent days. In the run-up to it, in last week's deep dive, in our 10-day trend, our Weather Studio Live, we covered a lot of things as to what's going on. But let's look at the situation that we have currently. And we have high pressure over Western Europe, also high pressure to the north of the UK. But it's this area of hot air, this heat dome, this heat bubble that's grown and grown and grown over the last week or so. That's really led to our temperatures rising. There's heatwave conditions, exceptionally hot weather for the time of year across many parts of Western Spain and North Africa, many parts of, Western Europe, many parts here seeing temperatures low to mid-30s, some parts of Iberia and North Africa, perhaps high 30s or even low 40s. And this is particularly hot for this stage in May. Yes, later, deeper into summer, we often get those kind of temperatures, but for this stage in the year, it's pretty extraordinary. So it's not just across the UK where we have the hot air, but that hot air then pushes its way into northern parts. And one chart that Aidan did show you in our deep dive last week, and I'm going to show you something similar, are the trajectories. So here we're looking at where the air in the 1,000 meters closest to the surface, so going up through the atmosphere, where it's coming towards London and where it has come from. And the different colours showing you the origin of the air at different heights. So the deep purple colours, they're the air right at the surface when it arrived at London at 15 UTC, so 15 Greenwich Mean Time, so 4 p.m. this afternoon. And then the greens are slightly higher up, and then the yellows, they're the air that reaches London around 4 o'clock this afternoon at 1,000 meters up, and where it's come from. And there are a few things that we can see on this chart. So if we follow the track, the path where the air has come from. Now, you may remember, if you watched Aidan's deep dive last week, that he showed that the air was actually originating from parts of, western side of the Atlantic, parts of Canada, not perhaps your typical warm location, but it was the process of it coming across the Atlantic and sinking, and then through adiabatic warming, it's the temperature of that air parcel was rising as it came towards the UK. Now, we're still getting that process of sorts. You can see some of these purple lines coming from quite high up, a few thousand meters up in the air, and so as that air sinks, it warms as it comes towards us, which is why we're seeing such exceptionally high temperatures. But it's coming from the Atlantic, it comes near Spain, near Iberia, and then it pushes northwards. So it's coming across warmer air than it was a few days ago. So Friday, end of last week, that's when Aidan was talking about the air coming across from parts of Canada. And so it's coming across warmer air or warmer ocean, warmer land, and then making its way northwards. And then what you can also see, as it's coming closer towards the UK, it kind of wraps around that area of high pressure that I highlighted earlier, that heat bubble that I mentioned, and then it comes back into the UK. So we're getting that real warming across of that air as it's making its way. So it's not only sinking, it's also coming now from a warmer direction than it was a few days ago, which is why it's now exceptionally hot for the time of year. If you think, I mean, if this kind of event happened in maybe a month, 6 weeks' time, then it would be even hotter as we're closer to the solstice, closer to the peak of summer. So from many people's point of view, we have to count ourselves lucky that it's happened in spring rather than in summer. But yes, some very hot air because of the direction that the air has come from, the process that it's gone through sinking and then tracking up from, well, now towards Spain. But things are going to change. Let's have a look at the bigger picture through the next few days. Let's get our air mass back on. And actually, I'll put rain on at the same time just to try and help tell the story a little bit. But we'll look at the bigger picture first, then I'll go into the details. And what we have is high pressure sticking around, still this warm air, still some very hot air across us as we go through into Wednesday. Notice something cooler down the eastern side, however, some fresher air coming in. Plenty of showers. I'll talk about the showers in a bit, but it's the warm air that we're paying attention to for the time being. Sticks around that warmth for a little while, but later as we go towards the end of the week and more so towards the weekend, that's when we start to see fresher conditions coming in. So through Friday and into Saturday. Saturday in the southeast we may cling on to that warm air, but elsewhere we see the fresher conditions. So temperatures will be dropping. That may be welcome news for some people who are perhaps struggling a little bit with the heat. So let's look at our trajectories again. And this time I have the same chart but showing where the air that's arriving in London at 4 p.m. in the afternoon on this Saturday, where it's coming from. And you can see a couple of things that I want to point out. Yes, the track has changed, so the air aloft is now coming from near Canada and then sinking southwards. You're sort of returning polar maritime air mass, I guess. And then, but the air nearer the surface is kind of making a more disjointed route towards the UK. But if we look at the height where the air is coming from, and whilst the air aloft at around 800, 1,000 meters is coming from higher up than it is currently, the air closer to the surface is no longer sinking down as much as it is at the moment. And as I mentioned, as Aidan talked about, as we've talked about in the past with our deep dives looking at heat waves and the origin of our air, it is really that process of the air sinking down that leads to the exceptionally high temperatures. So we're not really seeing that so much by the time that we get to the weekend, which is part of the reason why the air is just not going to be as warm as by the time we get there. And so that's why it is going to feel a fair bit fresher. Now, one other thing, whilst we're talking about the exceptionally warm or hot weather that we have at the moment, is some people have been asking whether or not this is as a result of the super or the strong El Nino that's being forecast and predicted for this year. And well, it's not the result of it, in as much as it's worth bearing in mind that the El Nino hasn't actually happened yet. We're forecasting it to happen, and we are forecasting it to be a major one, but it hasn't actually started. Here we have a look at our sea surface temperature anomalies, and for it to be an El Nino, we need these to be greater than 0.8 degrees. So the anomaly to be greater than 0.8 degrees. And you can see at the start of May, when this chart was looking at observations as opposed to forecasts, you can see we're around a half a degree, so not quite the 8s. And even with the projection, we're not quite greater than 0.8 degrees. If we follow it along, you can see by September, the forecast is for the temperatures to be around 2 degrees up. And so that's why it's forecast to be such a significant El Nino event. But for the time being, not the cause of this hot spell. Worth bearing in mind, these sort of teleconnections, when it comes to the mid-latitudes, they're more of an impact for the winter months. During the summer, more likely to affect the tropics than the mid-latitudes. But let's look now to the UK and what's going to happen weather-wise through the next few days. I won't go into a huge amount of detail about this. You can catch more about that on the 10-day trend, which will be out tomorrow. But worth bearing in mind, through the next few hours, we do have some showers developing through this evening, overnight. A little bit uncertain as to exactly whether or not these are going to kick off, but do bear in mind there's the potential for some heavy, possibly thundery ones. We do have a thunderstorm warning across this part of the central UK. If we do see some intense thunderstorms where you could be looking at 20-30 millimetres of rain in an hour or so, large hail, some gusty winds, so there could be some problems as a result of that. So do take care if those heavy showers develop, but like I say, uncertainty as to whether or not they do. Why could the showers develop? Well, let's look. Obviously, we have the heat, the warmth, the energy, so that could allow for some convection, but we also need to bear in mind we're going to get some areas of convergence. And so here I have a diagram showing us where we're going to get these areas of convergence, where the air comes from two different directions and they bash together, and then it's that process of the air hitting against each other. It has to go somewhere, so then it rises up, and it's that process of the air rising up that leads to the convection and can lead to some severe thunderstorms developing as well. So here you can see a bit of a sea breeze coming in from the North Sea, flow in other directions, a bit of convergence around here and convergence as well. But it's as we go through this evening and the start of the night, you can see this area of convergence around more central areas with the sea breeze, the general flow that we have across us. And it's in this area as well. That's perhaps where we're most likely to see those hefty showers developing later on today. So watch out for those. So partly as a result of the convergence that we could see some thunderstorms. But that's not the end of the shower risk. Let's look further ahead. Let's just run this through now. If I press the button, we actually can. Third time's the charm. And yeah, a few showers through this evening. Mostly dry overnight, just a bit of rain for Scotland. Then greater chance of a few showers kicking off tomorrow. Slightly different setup tomorrow. There is actually a bit of upper forcing coming up from the south, and so that's going to lead to some showers developing. But worth bearing in mind, whilst I am expecting some elevated convection, the air is actually quite dry below it. So whilst there could be some showery rain developing through Wednesday, there's potential that some of the showers might just be quite high up, and then we won't actually see a huge amount near the surface. So you might see some clouds in the sky, but anything could actually evaporate before it reaches us. That being said, I do think we will see some showery rain, and it could be heavy through tomorrow, but just worth bearing in mind a lot of the showery rain appearing could be just from elevated convection and less affecting the surface. Nonetheless, some more showery rain coming through Wednesday night and into Thursday. Then Thursday itself actually looks largely dry. Plenty of sunshine on offer for many of us, just a bit of cloud towards the southwest, a bit of perhaps across parts of Northern Ireland as well. Then we run through. And then things start to take a bit of a change. I mean, Friday's looking like a quiet day, really. There'll be some stratus, some cloud around, some showery rain towards the north, maybe some showery stuff towards the southeast. But then it's into the weekend when a weather system's set to come in from the west. Some persistent, perhaps heavy rain at times making its way through and eventually pushing its way towards the east-southeast. There's been some uncertainty, some model disagreement about the timing of this feature. But a bigger cause of uncertainty, perhaps, is how quickly that warmer air is going to be cleared away by the fresher conditions, and also the showers across parts of the southeast that are potentially going to be developing through Friday and Saturday. So you can see through Friday some showers in the southeast, but actually our model, the Met Office model, doesn't really have anything on Saturday in parts of the southeast, and that's actually a different story to what ECMWF shows. Here's 24-hour rainfall totals for this Saturday. On the left-hand side I have the Met Office model, on the right-hand side I have the ECMWF, European Centre for Medium Range Weather Forecasting. So our model is going for higher rainfall totals across parts of Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, 30, perhaps 40 millimetres in the wettest places. But across the bulk of England and Wales, apart from the far northwest, not a huge amount of rain through Saturday. It's not really until more so into Sunday when the rain pushes through. But the European Centre model has the rain coming through ever so slightly slower, so less wet across parts of Western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But it does have the heat continuing in the southeast, and so that then brings the risk of some showers across parts of the southeast. So it's a bit tricky at this sort of lead time. I'm sure this will be covered in more detail in the 10-day trend. But yeah, bear in mind that I think this is perhaps most likely, but we could see things being that little bit slower, in which case we could see some showers developing in the southeast on Saturday. So that's something to bear in mind. Then I realise I haven't actually covered temperatures particularly well for the next few days. So let's look at those, and what do I want to get up? Here we go. So this chart looks at the temperature anomaly, maximum temperatures for the next few days, and there are a few things to highlight. So unsurprisingly, today across pretty much all of England and Wales, some parts of southern Northern Ireland and southwestern Scotland, temperatures well above average. The scale for this deep red is 9 degrees or more. So many places, much of England and Wales and parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, seeing maximum temperatures today more than 9 degrees above average, which is exceptional. Not everywhere though, it's a bit fresher, cooler. Temperatures just about in double figures perhaps across some parts of northern Scotland. Then through Wednesday, and I should have pointed this out. Let's go back to our UK picture. Let's get cloud. Let's go into Wednesday. And there will be some low cloud coming in from the North Sea. So down eastern areas, if you get stuck under that low cloud, it is going to feel markedly fresher than it does at the moment, and markedly fresher than it will do across other parts of the country. And we can see that if we go back to that chart. I think it was this one, here it is. You can see down the eastern side, temperatures for some, particularly around coastal spots, could actually be a little bit below average. Meanwhile, towards the west, the southwest in particular, still temperatures more than 9 degrees above average for the time of year. Then the warmth kind of pushes back again as we go through into Thursday. Still some eastern coastal parts that little bit fresher, but nonetheless for many warmer. And actually across some parts of Scotland, Thursday is going to be the warmest day of the week, the warmest day of this hot spell. And then we see the cooler air coming in from the west by the end of the week, albeit in the southeast, clinging on to some hot weather for that little bit longer. So let's have a look at something else. Let's look at London. Have I actually clicked on London? No, I haven't. There we go. And yeah, mid-30s maximum temperatures through today. Then Wednesday looks a little bit more comfortable, but then still hot by Thursday. Like I just showed you, the heat a bit more widespread again by Thursday, and then a gradual drop off through the next few days. But exactly how quickly we see the high 20s disappearing, a little bit uncertain, but nonetheless it is still going to be very warm or hot until the weekend when things become fresher. We're only talking about them dropping to around average, so it's not a huge drop. It's not like it's going to be really cold or anything like that, but it's just not going to be anywhere near as hot as it is for the time being. But if we pick somewhere western Scotland, and as I mentioned, it's a bit cool today, but then we're seeing temperatures rising, and Thursday could be the peak in the temperatures there. I don't think I've picked a particularly hot spot. Here we go. You can see temperatures peaking Thursday, low to mid-20s, and then dropping down by Friday. More confident with the cooler, fresher air coming in across northwestern parts through into Friday. So yeah, it is hot at the moment, and if you're struggling, do look to the future. The next few days there is cooler, fresher air coming. Just exactly where you are depends on how quickly it's going to make its way through. What else did I want to talk about? Actually, I think the last thing that I had to cover was something that happened earlier today. We do have a bit of a southerly flow across us at the moment, and as we often see with a southerly flow, we drag in some Saharan dust. And you can see that on the imagery. It's happening, sorry, I should have slowed this down a little bit. I don't think me pressing pause will do anything. Nope. But you can see there is this band of dust that's come up from the south, and so don't be surprised if your cars are looking a little bit dirty. I mean, it's been so dry, I'm not surprised if your cars look quite dirty. But yeah, some Saharan dust around for the time being. And when we get a bit of rain, if we get any showers later on today, that could wash a lot of it out, and that could lead to that dusty, reddy orange residue appearing on surfaces as well. So that's something to consider. And, well, to look forward to. The Saharan dust is also contributing to poorer air quality. And so that's another thing that we need to bear in mind. So, yes, there's reduced air quality and also very high levels of UV at the moment. So do obviously take care in the hot, sunny weather, which is going to continue for a little while yet. Right, thank you so much for joining me for this week's Deep Dive. It's been a blast as always. Remember, get those comments coming in and those questions. I'll be trying to answer as many of them as I can later on today, or maybe we'll go through some of them in the Weather Studio Live on Friday. Annie and I will be here 12:15. As always, hit that like button, hit the share button. It really does do us a favour. And I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.